Okay, all I felt after that mess was confusion, disorientation, discomfort, intrigue, indigestion, and mild, inexplicable arousal. Sounds like Digital Circus to me. Let's do this.
Box bites.
Finally, another demented playdate with my fellow media clowns of unsound mind. Glitch sure took its sweet time releasing the big midpoint episode to their 9-part circus story, but I get it, this is basically their flagship show. They want to put in that extra oomph to really wow their fans. They also needed to divvy up their resources as they were recently cooking up the Gaslight District pilot. And if you saw my review, you'd know that I felt the cooking was very warranted. If you don't mind your steak being a little well done and over-seasoned. But today we're finally diving into the Amazing Digital Circus Episode 5, Untitled, to see what our goosey gander has generated with all that prep time. And if you were curious from the advertising whether this episode is mainly a baseball story, a noir story, or a safari story, the answer is D, all of the below. Basically, after Caine's newest nautical adventure leaves the circus dwellers feeling more salty than sweet, he decides to host a tent meeting to gather feedback on which adventures sound most interesting to his ironclad waffle cones, either his creations or the ones from the suggestion box. Seems like no one can agree on what makes an adventure enjoyable, so in an act of desperation, Caine hosts his first ever lightning round, where he puts a bunch of suggested outings back to back to see what sticks. And what follows is a rapid-fire barrage of deranged dream fulfillment, visual versatility, half-in-the-bag backstory bar talk, and even some unexpected payoffs from the gang's previous adventure. And while the episode at face value can come off as kinda messy and disjointed, as a whole it provides a comfortable mixture of long-awaited reveals and future prospects that left me saying,
Congratulations, you won.
Let's start with the basic premise. The idea of doing a bunch of mini-adventures birthed straight from the minds of our motley circus mates is actually a really smart way to vary up the show's usual Journey of the Week format. It allows for plenty of unique settings and styles that probably couldn't carry their own episodes, but are still ripe with potential for standout scenes or even just one-off jokes. Plus the fact that they all come from our main cast instead of Caine's slowly corrupting imagination means we get to see subtle glimpses of the origins of these crazy clowns and what their lives were like before entering this virtual prison. Some are more obvious than others, like we know that Gangle is a failed manga artist as shown in Fast Food Masquerade, so of course her adventure idea would be a self-insert slice-of-life anime. But we also find out that Zooble used to be a bartender and tattoo artist once upon a time in one of her suggestions, so that's pretty cool. And call me crazy, but the fact that both of Jax's adventures involve him being a TV personality, complete with sitcom laugh track and opening monologue, might imply that he wanted to be an actor at some point in his life, or maybe actually was. This would also explain certain quirks from other episodes, like when he directly addresses the audience in Mildenhall Manor. Heck, maybe his long leg design is a reference to the classic actor phrase, break a leg. What do you, the audience, think? Because I think I might be onto something here. As for main character focus, things are pretty evenly split between Ragatha and Jax in this episode, with both of them getting some much needed follow-ups after the crew really started cooking with them in episode 4. Basically, after Gangle's little employee reevaluation, Jax was left as a mentally drained husk, stripped of his internal walls of emotional seclusion, and coming out as just a normal, cordial guy, who was able to have a friendly conversation with Pomni without any smack talk or insults. And when I first watched episode 4, I was hoping that event wouldn't just be a one-time occurrence that he'd forget about next time, and instead something that would cause him to kind of reevaluate his current position at the circus and maybe smooth out his rough edges a bit. Not completely 180 his personality, but at least make him realize that having no shoulder to cry on when you're at your wit's end sucks. So maybe it's time to start opening up to at least one or two people. And lo and behold, here he is, opening up more than he ever has before, specifically to Pomni. Turns out the hip-hop herald of apathy cares more about people's opinions than he initially let on. So much so that during a night of stargazing, he almost hangs all his dirty laundry out to dry in a matter of minutes. We get hints at his complex history with companionship, where he seems to fear close connections with others, but also desires them as well. He's jealous of people who can form close bonds, and yet he makes no effort to try and create any of his own. He claims that constant affection and reassurance of one's love for you is meaningless and potentially hints at ulterior motives, but is that solely targeted at Ragatha? Is it something that occurred during an event in his past? Is it just a lie that he tells himself to reinforce his mantra that making friends is meaningless? Honestly, it could possibly be all three. Maybe during his time outside of the game, he witnesses numerous losses or betrayals which puts him off from ever baring his soul to anyone else in the future, only to enter the circus and start connecting socially again when he meets new folks that he gels with. Maybe he feels a little more reassured about the longevity of these circus connections, since death is a non-issue and they can't leave since they're all trapped together. A little messed up, but reassuring to him at least. But then when his buddies become subject to abstraction and he's left alone again, he devolves into the insufferable jerk he's portrayed as in the pilot. Long story short, Jax's relationships in the real world were messy, his relationships in the circus were just as bad, and in the end he sees no point in trying to get close to people anymore. This isn't entirely outside the realm of possibility. I mean, Ragatha does say that Jax doesn't have friends anymore, which clearly strikes a nerve with him. Plus, Caine's little intermission ends with Jax sliding in front of a door with a crossed out circus mate on it. Could this be hinting at one of Jax's lost friends? A key aspect which turned him into the jerk we were first introduced to? Did ties between them sever because of circumstance? Or maybe it was his own fault. Like, could you imagine Jax being at the epicenter of a hell of a boss Blitz style situation where the erasure of someone he loved was because of something he did? But instead of what happened being an accident like with Blitz, this is something he did intentionally and he deeply regrets it. I'm just spitballing here, but gooseworx has made it very clear that there's a lot to uncover about Jax, and the worst things he's done have yet to be revealed. Only the strongest Jax fans will survive, and I've managed to hang on to hope for him even throughout all the Candy Kingdom carnage and Wii Sports-esque mayhem. Heck, as early as episode 2, I was already able to see Jax as someone who hid his true feelings behind barriers of past trauma instead of just an abusive sociopath, and it's nice to see my long-term investment is finally paying off. So hopefully during the second half of this series, we'll see exactly why this rabbit wound up being such a jack. And also, what's up with that whole corn thing? My guess is that he killed someone, buried them in a cornfield, and now he's traumatized by the vegetable. Or corn killed his grandma, one or the other. Ragatha, meanwhile, gets payoff in the form of some elaboration on those saucy statements from her Mellow McDonald's shift. Remember the way she talked about horses and the way she admitted to hating Jax but not wanting him to hate her? Well, after strutting into the bar like a classy lady of the night, we get to hear a casual convo about everyone's lives before the circus, including hers. Turns out she was a rich little ranch girl who grew up on a farm with horses, chickens, and an abusive mother figure. And I imagine her tendency to be a toxic positive people pleaser who's afraid of crossing lines or saying things out of turn stems from two main aspects. Her uptight upbringing, where she's expected to act perfect at all times or be ridiculed, and the fact that she probably wasn't able to socialize much in a non-controlled environment, meaning she never really had an organic group of friends. The way she tries to deflect the misery of her tragic backstory with jovial joy or apologize for even the slightest off-kilter comment just reeks of someone who's afraid that she won't be accepted if she's anything other than a perfect altruistic angel, which I imagine is what she was conditioned to believe. She won't be accepted if she makes even one mistake, and that mindset has poisoned her to this day. However, as we've heard from multiple tent dwellers throughout various episodes, this kind of behavior isn't charming or enchanting. It's kinda off-putting and fake feeling, and you can tell that Ragatha is slowly getting frustrated and confused at the fact that no one in the circus wants to be her friend. Not to mention being jealous that even someone as polar opposite to her as Jax has someone that wants to buddy with him. You can see through multiple context clues throughout the episode that while Ragatha outwardly disapproves of Jax's behavior, she's also super jealous of how well Pomni gets along with him and sometimes even tries to imitate him. The way she blames Jax for conditioning Pomni to act like him at the baseball game, the way she makes a kinda dark Jax-esque joke only to fail miserably during the bar scene, that glance she gives Pomni when Jax is ripping apart his doppelganger and Pomni snickers at it, and the way she just kinda walks away sad after seeing Pomni and Jax go off to have fun together. She's clearly envious of how well they're getting along, but is still not quite ready to admit all her weaknesses like that to others, at least not as much as Jax is now. And that's her biggest problem. She can claim that Jax is conditioning Pomni all she wants, but the truth of the matter is that he isn't. He's just being his natural, jokey, kinda crass self, and is actively willing to talk to Pomni about some of the more sore spots in his life. And that's what Pomni is drawn to, the organic truth in his behavior. After what happened in episode 4, Jax is slowly starting to act more real, which leads to people actually wanting to be around him, while Ragatha sticks to her guns and keeps up the perfect girl act. I can't really blame her since it seems like she was conditioned to think this is how she should act, but it shows that the true way to form connections with people is to be truthful and be yourself. Honesty and communication are the two pillars of any relationship after all. I'll admit, at first I was confused as to why Jax and Ragatha were gonna share a spotlight episode, but I think it's because they're basically two sides of the same coin. Both crave companionship, yet both are in mindsets where they're unable to pursue it due to past events. Ragatha was taught to believe that one must be a perfect, obedient, inoffensive angel or risk being demeaned by others. And as such, she acts in this way and conceals all negative emotions despite experiencing feelings of sadness, anger, and jealousy just like everyone else. She unintentionally portrays herself as a personalityless yes man who always takes the path of least resistance, and it comes off as artificial and fake. Jax, meanwhile, seems to be traumatized by the loss of past relationships, either in the circus, out of the circus, or both, and makes it a point to push people away with cruel behavior and never reveal anything about himself at the risk of becoming too attached to someone and the cycle repeating. He knows what it's like to lose someone he cares about, and he refuses to let it happen again. Ragatha represents ignorance and inexperience, while Jax represents excessive loss and trauma. But in the end, after witnessing an emotion-destroying event in episode 4, Jax finally makes the jump and starts opening up again, being himself, admitting his faults, and others naturally gravitate towards him because he's finally being real. Ragatha hasn't reached that point yet, but I'm hoping the events in this episode are a bit of a wake-up call to her that you don't need to put on this mask of perfection to win people's favor. If anything, being honest, being angry, and just being human is the true way to form natural connections. It's good to be nice and help people sometimes, as shown with Gangle hitting the ball thanks to Ragatha's instructions in the last episode, but it also pays to flex your other emotions as well. Friendships and relationships as a whole will never be perfect. Friends are not nicey nice companions who give you nothing but support and praise your every action. They're people who confide in each other and can be comfortable and genuine around each other without fear of judgment. They care about you, warts and all, as long as you're willing to let those warts show. However, it's also important to know that relationships, in one way or another, will sometimes end, either because of circumstances within the relationship, or sometimes things you just can't control. And that doesn't mean you should give up on kinship altogether. You should move forward and see what other potential friends the world has to offer. Similar to Gangle's conundrum in Fast Food Masquerade, I feel like this is a message that can resonate with tons of people. And hopefully this reassured folks that the best friendships are the ones that are open and real. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to open yourself up, or you risk missing out on something wonderful. Like being friends with a manic clown girl. Speaking of Pomni, she essentially acts as the middleman in this episode, being caught between these two feuding tent mates and sometimes trying to act as a referee when things get out of hand. She doesn't get that much to do in the actual story itself, but we do at least get a bit of info about what she did before entering the circus. And at this point, I might as well apply to be a telemarketer because I just keep calling them. Seriously, this is the second time in a row that one of my old circus theories actually turned out to be somewhat correct. Turns out the reason Pomni wound up in the virtual madhouse is because she's a thrill seeker who explores abandoned buildings and posts videos of her escapades on the internet. Jax even straight up says she's a YouTuber. And guess who called that over a year ago? Okay, I said that Pomni was goaded into playing the digital circus game by her jerky co-worker since people online enjoyed seeing her scared, but instead she actually explores these places of her own volition to get a buzz of excitement. Not quite the same, but my statement about her being portrayed as a jester because she's an online content creator completely confirmed. Now we just need to wait and see if Kinger truly is the lead programmer of the digital circus game. And if so, my work here will be complete. The last thing I want to touch on is the comedy. Disappearing guy. Oh, you wanted more? Okay, well how about the circus team's evil clones, including evil witch Ragatha, who literally melts when she's defeated, jerky Pomni, who swears like she's on Xbox Live Arcade, dorky bumpkin Zooble with more air in her head than bubble, and precious bean Jax, who gets cannibalized at the end of the game. Honestly, if any of these adventures could have been full 22-minute episodes, I'd have loved for this one to go on for longer, just so we could see more of the evil doppelganger team. There's also Jax being turned into a vegan. Okay. And Jax being put in a maid outfit. Slay. Actually, can we go back to the vegan thing? It was established in the pilot that the one thing Caine can control are the circus mates' minds. And yet, here he is turning Jax into a vegan, which is something he's forced to do against his will. Is Caine? Maybe... You don't think he... You know what? Video for another day. but I got my digital eyes on you, Magic Mouth. Overall, Untitled is a crazy joyride through multiple goofy misadventures that occasionally slows down to explore the psyche of two polar opposite players who essentially have the same problem. It teaches that both pushing people away and trying too hard to get into their good graces will yield the same lonely results, and it's best to meet in the middle and open up with people while also not letting the past dictate your present too much. It's funny, it's insane, it's chill, it's deep, it's got a blink and you'll miss it moment with Caine that makes you wonder when everything is inevitably gonna come crashing down. You know, all the fixings of a stellar episode. But hey, enjoy the goofy lightheartedness while you can, because a lot of people are saying this is the eye before the storm episode. And after this adventure, things are about to get crazy. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, I'm gonna go disappear into the ether like this episode's best joke. And until we meet again, what do you guys think? Was this trip through virtual insanity a blast from start to finish? Or were you as bored as Caine was throughout most of it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.